I'm going to compile the rules book for this. Yeah, I borrowed stuff from several different editions, and I need to figure out exactly which parts I'm going to have in the book. Hmm. Is mic working? Okay. Yeah, my monitoring was. It didn't come up with audio immediately. I really hope I don't have the thing dropping in and out today. I had issues with that last time. Anyway, onward. Oh, I need to add a new source and a new item. Crap, I forgot that part. Whatever. No big deal, really. File, new, text document. File, save as. Mm, doc, Gigaopoly. Okay, now I just need to add this as a source in Streamlab because, of course, I do. And it won't actually let me duplicate this source. What? Oh, cripes. Mm. Yeah, I'm gonna quickly throw out links and okay. Well, a few more. All right. Well, that's enough sending links, I guess. All right. Anyway, so this has a rather simple premise here. Like many other editions of Monopoly, I need a rules book. Oh, right. I was working on the source and I got distracted. Okay, capture specific window. I really, really don't. All right, there. Okay. Anyway, so yeah. To a certain extent, I'm going to be using the Ultimate Monopoly rules as base because, well, I originally thought about using the original Monopoly rules and then just like rewriting those, but then I realized that I would have to add several pages of stuff that already exists in the Ultimate Monopoly rules. So I might as well just start with the Ultimate Monopoly rules and then just take out all of the stuff that I need to. So I just started going through and just like copying things one at a time. I originally started doing this in a flat text document, so the format is a little bit different than what you would normally have for a Word document. Well, guess what? I'm going to have a copy of this in flat text. It's just that using Word is actually easier to stream than a Notepad. Anyways, so yeah, like you'll see here a lot of differences between this and Ultimate Monopoly because there's a whole lot of things that I took out that you have in Ultimate Monopoly. I don't have final numbers for these decks here. I'm probably going to have, I don't know, 20 or more of each. Um, so I left these box things as a placeholder to remind me to come back for those. Oh, right. One more thing I need to do real quick. Whoops. Mm, never mind. Anyway, so as you'll see here, I removed property deeds from the game completely and came up with a different way of calculating rent amounts. And it occurred to me that while I spent a lot of time working out the exact specifics of how that would work for regular properties, I did not, in fact, actually work out how it would work for utilities, railroads, or cab companies. Which, kind of a problem. And I'm going to have to try to figure out how to make it fit together. But that's what we're here to do. Finish the rules. Anyway, going back to this here. Here's where I worked out the stuff. Like, this is just like basic planning stuff, nothing interesting. Yeah, it's like this isn't actually like the final thing that I have either. Okay, when it says travel card deck and it says white cards, these are actually the roll tokens. That's the name I eventually decided I was going to use for them. Now, I do have travel cards, but the travel cards are going to be something different than what the roll tokens are. So, because like, what I decided to do with the travel cards is going to use the travel cards for all of the stuff like move to X property, move to Y property. Because like that's actually one of those things that I found highly disappointing about the travel deck is that they're trivial. Landing on a space and ooh, you get to draw a travel card. Oh wait, that's all it does. Not much at all. Okay then. Orange cards. Now this says stock market, but and these are all the item list here is ideas for what to have on these. Also, these I changed the color to green. Yeah, yeah, I reassigned the colors because um, chance and community chest are orange and yellow. So having them as the ring random draw decks just felt right. So that means like reassigning things. But this is also like stock market and investment. Now, the investment part of this is kind of sort of just opportunities for reduced rent. Because the basic idea is I came up with is that it's something you'll see in Eco Monopoly, which was a prototype that no one ever finished. Also, the bus ticket thing, I fused that with the travel deck, which I'm mostly just renaming the bus thing to travel cards. But I'm going to have a little bit more to it than that, but not much. Yeah, my travel deck, despite being red, is going to have several things that used to be in the bus ticket deck. That's just property stuff. Property groups, utilities, spaces, rent and developments. Okay, so this is part of it that I was actually just I was actually like writing out rules. Like each property has 10 improvement levels. Why? One of the things I noted when I was mathing basic Monopoly, it's like here we have New York Avenue's numbers. The cost to buy New York Avenue is $200. Unimproved, the rent is a paltry $16. Almost nothing. There are in Basic Monopoly 5 levels of improvement. Um, Things like Ultimate Monopoly also have the option of having basically a second hotel placed on things. This second hotel increases the high end price to be even higher. Thing is, this number spread is wonky as hell. Like 80, 220. Okay, that part's not particularly strange. It's the jump from 2 to 3 that I find to be particularly head scratching. Don't understand at all. Someone told me once that there's some sort of elaborate math behind this that only like really knowledgeable people will ever understand. But they also told me that the highly in-depth, detailed math makes several assumptions that are only true in certain specific scenarios and thus isn't actually relevant to most things. Yeah, I don't actually know what the logic was. I never actually saw the full breakdown. Anyway, though, what I decided to do was basically a way to have the same top end and something that's very close for the bottom end and just completely change the progression mechanic. In theory, you could condense this to only 5 or 6 levels, I guess. So it goes like from 1 to 2. It's well, because like 100 and 200, those are actually pretty close to the same. Like one house versus 2 houses, both charts pretty good. Then at 3 houses, the stock version is what I would have at 6, but whatever. Anyway, like I said, 3 houses is seemingly the sweet spot for standard Monopoly. Oh, well. Anyways, for this, it's a much more smooth power curve. Had some interesting changes to the way color groups are going to work, but that's one of the many things that I'm going to have to put into the rules as I'm writing them out. But here's the thing. While I did this breakdown for the way that properties work, or that color group properties work, that is, I did not do a similar breakdown for the way that utilities, taxi cabs, and so on work. And that's, I think, is actually the reason why I have a duplicate of this slide, is that this particular slide is supposed to be for the utility and stuff rent. Alrighty then. So what am I going to have for source data on that? Well. All right, so one thing that I can, rather easily remember is stock. Stock doesn't even have taxis, so, All right. Let's start with railroads. Cost to buy a railroad is 200. Yeah, I'm going to use the term base cost for this. 200. Because, that's the one stat about the value of the property that gets printed on the board. And I'm going to use that as the key for any calculations that are going to calculate how all rents work. So, anyways, railroad base cost 200. One railroad, you get 25. Now, this formula stream died. Um, oh, I just had to refresh the kick page. Okay. Hmm. Alrighty then. Well, whatever. No need to panic yet. Anyways, when you own all four of the railroads in Classic Monopoly, you get the base cost of buying one railroad as rent. The New York example, which, as I mentioned before, it's like generally most of the properties in Classic Monopoly have a very similar calculation for the rent costs. It's not exactly perfectly regular, but yeah, kind of similar. It's not like a plug and play formula, but close. Anyway, so the maxed out cost on New York Avenue is 5 times the actual purchase price of the property. Now, caveat here, the investment cost for railroads is actually extremely small. So, you spend 200 to buy each railroad, it's a sunk cost of total of 800. That's not a whole lot. For this sunk cost for having a hotel on New York Avenue in Stock Monopoly, that's actually 700 for New York alone. The even building principle means that you have to have at least 4 houses each on the other two orange territories in order to be able to build a hotel in New York. Also, you have to own the other two orange territories. So that's an investment of actually 1,300 beyond the actual base price to buy the properties. So a much heavier investment for a much higher reward. And thing is, the investment on New York itself is 700, and it pays a return of 1,000. So your investment is only 70% of your reward. That is a much higher return rate than what you get for railroads. Again, obviously, there's opportunity cost here, but actually getting control of all four railroads in Monopoly is not easy. Anyway, though. So, what would my plan for this actually be? Well, let's take a quick look at the actual game board that I created as part of this, shall we? Because, you know, that's kind of important. Oh, yeah. So, how many railroads do I have here? There's 4 in Ring 2, 4 in Ring 3, and 8 in Ring 4. That's a grand total of 16 railroads on the entire board. There are 16 railroads. So, what level of ridiculous price do I want to have if you actually manage to control 16 railroads? Oh boy. Yeah. Oh, and also one thing I decided to incorporate that some of the variants added is the ability to improve a railroad space to increase the relative value of the railroad. What those were is it's basically you're just building a hotel on a railroad. That's more or less what the idea was. Is that you add a hotel to your railroad, and then it gives you doubled rent on that railroad that you added a hotel to. To be honest, I think what I'm going to actually do is do a smooth scaling thing and just copy the other one. Because let's look at how this works at Ultimate Monopoly and see how that's calculated. Because, again, I went over like the basic idea, but I didn't actually cover the specifics. Movements, railroads. Build a train depot, cost 100. A train depot doubles the rent due for the railroad. You don't need to own multiple railroads before building a train depot. 1-1. Train depots may be sold to the bank for half the cost to build them. And, okay, in Ultimate Monopoly, it's actually twice as easy to land on a train space as it is in regular Monopoly, because in Ultimate Monopoly, trains are actually, train depots are spaces that actually occupy parts of 2 different rings simultaneously. So there's 2 different ways to land on them. They're actually the only properties that have that. So the increased opportunity to land on them and the fact that you can double the rent. Thing is, Ultimate Monopoly doesn't actually change the base rent. In Ultimate Monopoly, it maxes out at So, what would I do? That's an interesting one. I don't actually want to have it so that you have like a doubling scheme where, because like I'm going to put depots in here, so whatever the top tier rent is, building a depot will double it. Do I? Is it an amusing idea to have it get apocalyptic if one player owns all 16 of the railroads? Yes, yes, it is. And how am I going to define apocalyptic? Well, about that. The highest actual rent I have on one of the properties in Gigaopoly is 1060. That's the base. Which, if you looked at the way my formula works, you just multiply the base by 5 to get the maxed out rent value. So max that out, and you get, let's see here, 5,300. So, what level of doubling would you get at 1,600? Well, mm, uh, oh, right. Oh, come on. Silly Windows calculator doesn't actually have the ability to tell it which, oh, I'm using the wrong one. No, that's not right either. Okay, that's 65,000. I don't want to do that. Nope. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's like if you just like do the doubling thing, no, no, mm-mm. Like 200, 400, 800, and we're just getting started. Yeah, I can't do a doubling thing. Not that level of doubling. Especially since that was just 2 to the 16th power that gives you 65,000. Uh, that's not even multiplying it by a base of 25. needless to say, 65,000. Yes, okay. Having prices in the thousands is reasonable, but as we established here, the highest I'm going to have for max rent on a regular property is not much more than 5,000. So I don't want these rent things to be, outpacing that. However, yeah, like 16 of them, each of them giving you 100, and then you put a train depot on top of that to double it. Hmm. Having it max out at 3,200 isn't bad. Yeah. Like, yes, this is slightly more, sunk cost than in stock Monopoly, but it scales more aggressively. And also, is that this is a situation in which you don't have as much reason to try to negotiate your way into getting all of the railroads. You can just have like 8 of them, and it's not the scaling is less aggressive. It's more smooth. Okay, so anyway, I'm basically just going to do the same scaling on houses. Yeah. So, just going to go 100, 200. Yeah. So, rent on railroads for this will be 100 times the number of railroads, and then double that if you have a depot on the specific railroad. Okay. Now, I need to actually write that out in a paragraph. All right. Rent is 100 times the number of railroads owned by the property owner. This is doubled if the property being paid for has a train depot added. Okay. This works for railroads. All right. Well, I did railroads in the other window. Okay. So, utilities and taxis. I kind of think taxis are going to end up being kind of similar to railroads and how they scale, but let's look at the ultimate monopoly thing about cab companies. Okay, so basically, cab stands are essentially the same thing as actually the way it's worded in the Ultimate Monopoly rules, cab stands actually ju- work exactly the same way train depots do. The difference between cabs and trains in Ultimate Monopoly is that trains are nexus points where rings meet. Cabs aren't, and have a special function you can do by paying whoever owns it a additional fee. It's honestly an interesting way of making them different. And one thing you may have noticed is that there is something I did that resembles that. Yeah, when you look at the board layout, railroads are always junction points. Now, railroads are not all of the junction points. That would be insane. But the most major ones, they are. Like these here. And these here. There's no room in Ring 1 for railroads, but hey, you know what? Got plenty elsewhere. So anyway, though. Cabs. How many cabs do I have? I wrote that down somewhere. I know I did. I don't remember where. Okay, one place says I have 29 railroads plus taxis. Hmm. Well, if I have 16 railroads, that means I would have 13 taxis. Let's look on the other board to. I'm going to count and verify just to see if that's how many cabs I put here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I think. I'm going to count that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. I apparently don't have any taxi spaces in the sub ring for ring 4. Okay, so I'm currently at 4 still. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, I just counted 11 on cabs. Hmm. Actually, wait. Not the PP. This one. Yeah, that's probably why I was highlighting them in colors. Ugh. Alright, go on. It's a taxi. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That doesn't make sense. I guess I must have counted wrong on one of these places. Okay, here. Okay, this here does actually add up to 11. So I guess the orange block on the other thing is out of date information. Bit unfortunate, but hey, whatever. Okay, so I have 11 cab companies. Hmm. Yeah, I'm probably just going to do that more or less the same way then. Yeah, out of date information. Bah. All right, so mm, yeah, decided I wanted to do this one a little bit differently than railroads because with railroads, building the trade depot doubles the amount on that one specific railroad. For this, building a cab stand just increases the value scaling of all of your other um, taxi places. Well, okay, all of your taxi places in general. So you're treated as if you have one more taxi property for rent scaling. Now to do the utilities. Okay, so for Gigaopoly, hmm, where does it have the utilities? Oh, okay. That's bonkers. Okay, so for utilities, it has 4, 10, 20, 40, 80, 100, 120, 150. Hmm. Also, that's 150 is at 8 utilities. Yeah, let's see about that. Okay, I currently have 13 utilities listed here. Now, yeah, about that. The 13 utilities, thing. Well, let's do some quick napkin math. 13,000. Now, remember, the baseline that I established earlier was that the most expensive property on the board, if fully maxed out on houses, is only 5,300. This However, hmm, that's actually not the maximum. I actually did times 7 for a medium rent on this at times 150. Oh, I did that wrong. I did the calculation wrong. Crap. Silly me. Oh, it's only 1,000. Yeah, what I screwed up is I forgot that you're not supposed to actually multiply the dice amount by the number of utilities you have. Because it does the whole like scaling chart thingy to determine the number of dice rolled, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. 1,000 isn't actually particularly scary. However, as mentioned before, the opportunity cost is actually rather low. So if you did somehow manage to acquire a bunch of utilities, you would get a decent sum for them, I guess, but not a massive one. Okay, so how am I going to change that? Because 150 is when you only have 8. Needless to say, I don't actually like the way they had the chart done. Uh, 40, 80, 100, 120. This is okay. The 4 and 10 thing, that is from Basic Monopoly. Okay. Now, having it go up to 20 is apparently something that they did in Monopoly Mega Edition. I'm going to double check that. Yeah, okay. Um, how would it work out if I just, I don't know, like added 10 or something? Okay, if it's just 10, that would actually mean that the high end would cap lower than in Ultimate Monopoly. I don't like that. That's inadequate for my needs. Seriously, having all 13 of them, no, 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 no. It needs to be higher than that. 20. 20 times 13 is 260. 20 times 8 is, yeah, that's also, about the right ballpark. You know what? This is a stupid idea. And it's going to be in line with some of the other stupid ideas I've had. Because one thing you may have noticed is that I'm drastically increasing all of the rent amounts for entry level properties. Because, like, utilities in regular Monopoly are a joke. Okay? 10 times whatever the amount's shown on the dice. Caps at 120. Which, okay, that's not trivial. It's not exactly scary either. And the reason why my idea here is something I find to be a bit iffy is that it would mean that you would get more for the base rent on a utility than you would in stock for having someone land on both utilities in the same turn, which feels a bit weird. However, I did also remove the with no houses stage from all of the property developments. So it does kind of fit with that. It is, however, higher than what you would have for um, mm, anything in stock. So, you know. Well, let's see here. The base cost of a utility is $150. 20 times 2d6. Actually, you know what? 20 times 2d6 is actually approximately equal to the base cost of the utility. Hmm. Huh. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so having someone pay on average the full base price of a utility for rent with only one utility, no, that's not going to work. What happens if I step? Um, I do think I'm going to have to come up with some kind of a chart for this. Because like having it go in fives when you have lower than a certain. Actually, you know what? I'm going to math how it goes with fives in general. Hmm. $455. That's not exorbitant. Not sure about this. Like the formula that they use in Ultimate Monopoly is wonky, and I'm not sure I like it. But having an actual proper formula for this might not be a workable idea. Because, again, as mentioned, traditionally the value increases with the number you own. Five scaling though. Because, like, having it go up by five for every single utility you have. And also, one thing to remember is that I'm not working with the idea that utilities can just like add up a hotel to it and double the value. I'm actually not going with that idea, which is a major con compared to stuff like railroads and taxis. Those actually scale more aggressively. Like for taxis, it's 150 times 22 is the max, which is 3,300. However, that takes a massive amount of investment. And also, taxi stands are actually just more expensive than utilities. I might change that. Yeah, I might change that. Change the base cost of all utilities to 300. You know, that's an interesting idea. Ugh. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly if I want to do it that way or not, but I'm kind of leaning in that direction, though. Yeah, something I hadn't thought of before. Yeah, it's like taxis are overpriced at 300. And utilities feel underpriced at 150. Changing that would actually make the scaling a lot better. Okay, so if the base cost for utilities was 300, let's see here. Um, hmm. 13 utilities at a scaling of 10 per. Then you roll 7 on the dice. That gives you 910 rent. You know, 910 is actually a reasonable amount when you have, that many utilities, I guess. This is something to workshop a little harder in the future. Yeah, I'm not going to call this a finished idea. But yeah, it's like utilities. Of the three things in this group of properties, like between like taxis, utilities, and railroads, this version, while utilities don't actually scale up uh, ridiculously high, they do have a relatively low cost of to enter. Okay, yeah, it's like changing taxis to have a base value of 150. Um, dr- drops their max value to 1650 rent, which that's pretty substantial. I don't hate it. Doesn't change how railroads would be calculated, but yeah, this is one of those things where I just didn't think about it ahead of time, and then when I started doing trying to math the numbers, I'm like, ew, I should change this. Well, yeah, change the base to 300. Okay. Yeah, again, this functionally raises the entry level rent. I've been raising the entry level rent all the way across the board because the fact that I am changing the way power scales in the game and making it scale more evenly because of the fact that even calculations are easier to do in your head when they're straight linear math. Because the old ones weren't. Base Monopoly actually has a doubling system for the railroads. If you have it double from 4 railroads to 8, no, no, that does not work. Having it go all the way up to 16 and then putting train depots on them, no, the doubling system goes completely flipping off the rails into La La Land. Nope, 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 can't do that. So again, no doubling system. In base Monopoly, the doubling system works only because it's capped at 4. Also, if you look into it in base Monopoly with the utilities, since in base Monopoly it only costs, uh, actually that's another point. Actually, doubling the cost to buy the utility means that having rent be 10 times the number on the dice per utility is actually the equivalent of in the base game having it be 5 times the 2d6 roll when you only have one utility. Because the cost of the utility itself is doubled, therefore, doubling the amount that you get on the rent makes perfect sense. Anyway, so changing the taxes so that the base is 150 and the utilities to have a base of 300, I like that change. I keep making more changes. This goes on. It's like, nope, that doesn't make sense. Nope, nope, that also needs changed. Yep, nope. Change this too. Alrighty then. Well, now that we've changed that, let's move on. I haven't actually written the rules for this yet. Dun dun dun. Hmm. Oh yeah, I guess landing on owned property is the section I'm here for. Yeah. Basic Monopoly was a bit cheeky in that regard because like Basic Monopoly just says look at the title deed to see what the amount that you owe for rent is, and then pay the owner of the property that. However, because of the fact that I decided that I don't want to have title deeds, all that stuff goes out the window. Mm. Seriously, I would need somewhere close to 200 title deeds. Nope, don't feel like it. All right, let's see here. Ultimate Monopolies. It is weird that Ultimate Monopoly has the different kinds of rent in different places in the book. I don't like that, so I'm going to rearrange them. I'm going to rearrange the book to be organized more like the original Monopoly book. Yeah, because that's what all these section headers are for. Is like these are the section headers on from the base game Monopoly book. Lending on owned property. Okay, so utility rent. All right, color group, railroad, utility. Okay. Yeah. Simple formulas. Why? Because they're easy to do the math in your head while playing the game. Simple as that. Okay. Anyway, Yeah. Anyways, so like that the minimum for a taxi is 75, which honestly, that's not chicken feed. Oh. Now for something that I'm not sure how I want to scale, and quite frankly, hmm. Okay, so I have 11 taxi stands. Okay, cab companies. When laying on an owned cab company, a player has the option to, in addition to normal rent, pay $50 to the cab owner or 20 to the pool if the player owns the cab company for transportation to something. Okay, so cab companies in the Ultimate Monopoly had very limited options of where to go, and I don't like that because they basically work like warp zones, which um hmm, while there was a certain amount of merit to it, I don't like this in terms of like the similarity to the way actual cabs work in real life. Also, having you letting you teleport to um arbitrary places all over the board is not something I actually want as a game design feature because of the fact that um yeah, it's a little too easy as a way to, escape or something. Hmm. Anyway, so yeah, 3 times the cab plus stance value. Like, okay, um, that maxes out at advancing 66 spaces. Yeah, that's insane. I don't actually expect the players to use this at more than like say 6. But still, being able to advance 18 spaces. Also, you don't have to move exactly 18. No, you move up to 18, which means that, anything in there that you want to stop on, yeah, you can just stop wherever. Like if you only want to move 13 spaces. Okay. Now, the previous one said that you have to pay an additional fee for this, which I don't hate it. Yeah, it's fine. Hmm. Not really sure how I would want to do that, honestly. Uh, What exactly do they have in Ultimate Monopoly for this again? Oh, right. Need to look at one of the cab cards to see what the where the rent was being defined was. Um. Oh, yeah. Okay, I see it now. Cab companies were as much of a lame derivative of railroads as I thought they were. Hmm. 30, 60, 120, 240. Which is actually kind of weak sauce when when you think about it. However, cab companies have the secondary fee in Ultimate Monopoly, so that if you pay the secondary fee, it is actually about the same overall. Hmm. So, this is one of those things where it's like I can't say that I genuinely like hate the way that they did it in Ultimate Monopoly. Just that the way they had it set up to scale doesn't really scale well when you try to scale it above 4, which is also true of the way railroads worked. And yeah, the thing with the utilities. The chart they have in Ultimate Monopoly is actually pretty good for the utilities. However, it's a nonlinear equation, and quite frankly, it's not actually an equation. So I want to use something that's an equation. A owner of the railroad. Okay. So railroads cap out at 3,200, but that requires you to own all 16 of them and have depots. Seems unlikely for that to happen. It is, however, a meaningful. It's a meaningful amount of rent. And actually kind of consistent with the amounts that I have for the regular properties. Yeah, part of me thinks that I should figure out a way to make the values have a sliding scale, but I just can't think of a good way to do that. So yeah, if any of the people watching this have an idea, please do tell. Anyways, color groups. I'm just going to copy that from the PowerPoint presentation. Oh, that's right. In the PowerPoint presentation, I didn't actually type it out properly. I just posted a paragraph about how it worked. Ugh. Yeah, that's actually incredibly simple. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah. All of these actually work very, very close to the same. Oh well. What made them different in regular Monopoly was actually the way that they had caps. I redefined the caps, and that changed the dynamic a lot. Also, I tried to actually make them balanced relative to each other, and regular Monopoly just doesn't have balance like that. Hmm. Okay, so anyways, for a comparison of property values, let's go back and look at regular Monopoly and the maximum value on the highest property in the original Monopoly. Okay, so Boardwalk, it actually capped out at only 2,000, which exactly fits with the math that I did for calculating all of this stuff. Yeah, no, seriously. The base price of Boardwalk is 400. So half of that is 200. Multiply that by 10. So this would be the equivalent of Boardwalk with a hotel on it. And you get 2,000. Now, because of the fact that I have 40 color groups, the top end properties on mine are a little more expensive than that. Wait, did I say a little? I mean a lot. But anyway, like it goes all the way up to 1060 because I decided how many properties I wanted to do, then mapped out a progression scheme to give them neat round-ish numbers that go up in uh, regular increments, and it just happened to stop at 1060. Yep. Well, that's the thing that happened. Anyway, so, but yeah, 1060 is 5,300. So, a lot more than Boardwalk, but that's because its base price is a lot higher too. Anyways, yeah, Boardwalk and New York were the only two I actually like seriously mathed out when I was doing my testing phase of figuring out how I wanted the stuff to scale. Also, as mentioned before, the stuff doesn't scale up and down regularly. Like Boardwalk with one house is 200, which is exactly half the base price of Boardwalk. Then when you put two houses on it, that triples to 600, which is over the base price. And then it just gets silly when you go to three houses, 1,400, which is seven. Wait, no, it's 2.5 times the base price. And yeah, anyway, though, I'm genuinely puzzled at how he decided on these numbers when he set them all those years ago. Seriously, Monopoly's what, 100 years old? The guy who set these values did, in fact, math them. They're not random bullshit. The internal logic escapes me, though. Alrighty then, so, I'm actually kind of bummed at how bland that came out, but I can't really think of a good way of having it do simple calculations. I could just put a table in the rulebook. Yeah, I could modify the table that we have in the rulebook for Ultimate Monopoly and create extended tables for the cab companies and railroads and utilities so that it would scale somewhat, but not hard. Thing is, having them at a, shall we say, real rent price from the get go fits with the way I redefine the properties. Because, let's face it, like I was saying about Boardwalk, in the original Monopoly, Boardwalk with one house has a rent of 200, which is what I would have for that as the base rent in mine, because my base rent is basically the property with one house on it. So, at one point I was actually seriously considering it making there a special tier where if you had zero houses, you paid like 1/10 of the property value or something. Then I realized that I had no real reason to do that, and it was pointless to have it in the rules at all. So, time to simplify, fling. Anyways, ending on unowned property. Mm, Yeah, this is a key thing from Monopoly Junior that I decided to appropriate for this. Monopoly Junior had you mark properties with what in that game were referred to as ticket booths um, to determine who owned properties. This, of course, means that Monopoly Junior had all of the house equivalent tokens match the player colors. So red, yellow, green, and blue. Which, quite frankly, was something that I found to be quite good. I actually liked that aspect of Monopoly Junior. Made certain aspects of the game real simple. In a good way. Sped up gameplay, and of course, in that game, all rents were a function of the base price of the property. However, that game did not have a particularly interesting way of scaling the rents because base rent was actually just pay the base price to purchase the property. So if the and also is that game had one digit numbers for all of the costs in the game. So, you know, the equivalent of Mediterranean would literally cost $1 to buy. $1. The rent was also $1. The only way to scale the rents in that game was to own an entire color group, which doubled the rent of all of the properties in the color group. That was the only way to scale rents in that game. Which means they don't scale very high. Anyway, but also that game had very minimal decisions compared to regular Monopoly. Because you don't improve properties in Monopoly Junior. You wheel and deal to get color groups, and there's not really a whole lot of strategy other than that. Oh boy. Anyway, so now that we've done all of this mathing, oh yeah, should capitalize those. Yeah. Okay. Sure. I guess capitalize them here too for consistency purposes. I guess I should capitalize depot. Yeah, it's like landing on unowned property in this is actually incredibly simple because there are no differences whatsoever. Although realistically, in regular Monopoly, the rules are actually stupid simple too. Oh yeah, that's right. I didn't. I was moving stuff around. I didn't actually finish modifying this. I was supposed to reword this here. Next, unknown property with number roll. Regulars must follow odd, even rules when going through junctions on the board, even if there. You know what? I'll keep that. It's a kind of useless side whatever, but it's something that could potentially be an edge case. dum 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 dum. Oh, that's right. I didn't define a term for when the bank gives you money. I defined a term for when you get money from the cash pool. Okay. So, yeah, just yeah, phrasing it as the bank pays you. That works. Also, yes, that's right. I intentionally set it up so that you can't move collect salary by moving backwards through a go space. There's a reason for that. This reason, of course, being that one of the role tokens has you just move backwards. That's all. That's the entire reason. That's it. Nothing actually particularly complicated. Why does this have unowned in red? Okay. Maybe it thinks unowned should be hyphenated. Hmm. I don't care. Also, no, it's actually. You know what? I'm gonna double check a copy of the original Monopoly rules here. Yeah, the original Monopoly rules does not have a hyphen in unowned. Single word, no hyphen. Okay then. Yeah. Also, it's like in the Monopoly rules, certain sections of the rules are actually just like a single sentence, maybe two. Also, this I just reminded myself of something I forgot to do. Why? Because I decided I wanted to have something where people would get something for being the first person to land on things. I mean, it's a generic resource that you can get other methods, but I figured it would be fun. Also, there are no nasty surprises here, just a benefit for whoever gets there first. Which, yes, this is one of those things where you have kind of sort of like a rich get richer thing, but this is a consolation prize for not getting properties because you don't get the tokens for landing on properties. You get them for landing on things like income tax and go. So, in some cases, it's more of a consolation prize than, an actual reward. Okay, so anyway, What even is the advantages for owners sections? Oh, it's actually very small. Hmm. So that's 200%. It's an advantage to hold the title deeds to all of a complete color group, for example, Boardwalk and Park Place or Kinetic Creek, Vermont, and Oriental Animals, because the owner may then charge double rent for unimproved lots of that property. See title deed cards. The advantage of owning houses and hotels rather than unimproved property is that rentals are very much higher than for unimproved lots and profit the owner immensely. Remember what this here kind of sort of implies that the concept of unimproved lots is basically just literally an empty lot, no buildings of any kind. You know, in that regard, it does kind of make sense that the rent for an unimproved lot is a token amount. And then it goes up drastically. However, having sale of completely unimproved lots with literally no buildings on them whatsoever in modern times in non, shall we say, wilderness areas is kind of not what I would consider to be the norm. Very, very normal to have buildings for sale, you know. Okay, so moving on. Back to the Ultimate Monopoly rules because I was going through them like one section at a time and then skipped ahead because I was doing a specific section. Anyway, oh yeah, the dice. That's what I was doing. Yeah, move ahead following odd even. I really, really, really need to put somewhere in here what the actual odd even rule is. Minor edge case, don't care. Yeah, this one here. Whatever. Hmm. You know, in Ultimate Monopoly, it doesn't mention the odd even rules in the actual movement rules. Just realize that. That's dumb. Also, in my case, because of the fact that there are so many junction spaces, yeah, that needs to be a more basic rule than it was here. Ah, yeah, this is the right spot for it. Realistically, moving 12 spaces, you're not going to be able to avoid passing a junction space. There's a lot of them. Well, seriously, like you know what is the longest on this that you can actually get without hitting at least one junction space? Oh, dang. Wow. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. That's 7 spaces. Yeah, that's the longest anywhere on the board goes without a junction space. Okay. Most roll. Oh wait, actually, hold on. This corner here. Um, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Yeah, okay. Same. Seven. Seven is the longest you can go. You are not necessarily going to run into a junction space every time you roll the dice, but it ain't exactly a rarity. Oh yeah, this corner's here. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Yeah, I'll just phrase it as sometimes. I mean, often, arguably a better word choice, but I'm just going to go with sometimes. You will sometimes pass through junction spaces. playing a plus run roll token will also change. You know, I'm going to have a section on roll tokens in here somewhere. Actually, you know what? Roll tokens need to be part of the movement rules, and the dice section is the movement rules. Actually, I'm going to rename this because this is actually the one from Basic Monopoly when movement was just roll 2d6 and do whatever the dice say. Super complex. Super simple. No complexity whatsoever. Oh yeah, also roll token should be capitalized as it is a proper noun. May also change if a roll is odd or even by changing total number of spaces moved. Um, hmm. Mm, okay, so that the odd even rule is here. I need to explain roll tokens in here somewhere. Yeah, here. Yeah. So you can change where your opponent moves. Actually, you know what? Yeah. No. Better if I don't. Actually, I'm not going to put that here. I'm going to add the phrase normal movement. Seeing rolling to get out of jail is not normal movement. Simple as that. And also, some of the spaces I have on the board have something like roll 1d6 and move that number of spaces. That's also not normal movement. So you can't play roll tokens for those either. It's you being moved by a effect on the board. Anyways. Okay, so yeah, roll tokens are actually one of the new unique features of this one because, yes, some of the things that I have for roll tokens are derived from the travel cards from one of the other editions, but the way you play roll tokens is different than the way you play travel cards. Also, the way you get roll tokens is different because I decided to have it so that the travel cards are things that you have to actually land on a travel card space to get. Whereas the roll tokens you can get from getting lucky on the speed die because 1 out of 3 results on the speed die is going to be a roll token. Mm. Oh, I didn't actually. What happened now? This says I'm still streaming. Okay, it's just like the stream player crapped out again. Oh, apparently on Kick, timing out spammers doesn't actually delete what they posted. So when you refresh it after the timeout period ends, it actually comes back. Oh boy. Anyways, my internet connection seems to have gone to crap. So I'm going to end it here. And realistically, I've been up at this for 2 hours anyway, so this was a good time to call it for now. Man, this is time consuming. Well, at least I got part of it done. You know what? I'm going to finish the Mr. Monopoly part. Uh, like, so much of this needs to be reworded. It's, this, no, I'm just going to delete that section. Okay, this is actually just specifying that the actual Mr. Monopoly rule or special movement actually can be forced to go backwards. Good to know, I guess. This is highly wordy and kind of redundant. Yeah. This is a weird edge case, but this feels like it needs reworded, yeah, but actually it's more like it would be a good idea to reword this, not that it strictly needs reworded. It's too wordy. Gah. It says, as per Mr. Monopoly rules, then like repeats all of the Mr. Monopoly rules. What is wrong with you people? All right. Well, I copied that. Movement order is kind of what the is wrong with you people. It is, however, a summarization of how to resolve complexity of having multiple things affecting your movement and why it has an order of operations. I'm not entirely sure because of the fact that, well, to a certain extent, I don't think it's necessary, quite frankly, but this is clarifying what the correct order of operations is for when you have multiple effects active. Hmm. Yeah, screw it. I will copy the movement orders thing and before I call it then. Uh, oh my goodness. Yeah, this is not giving the right formatting. Copying this stuff into Notepad actually gave me something approximately equivalent to the proper formatting, but copying it directly into Word doesn't. Um, I need to elaborate the go to jail thing. It was like, yes, like the actual travel vouchers used in Ultimate Monopoly are things you can actually play as part of rolling on your own turn, which, as I mentioned before, isn't bad, although it's kind of meh. I'm actually going to not have the travel vouchers be usable at any time during the movement phase of your turn. No, 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 no. I'm going to. I haven't actually figured out the entire list of what I want them to do yet. That's a problem I need to fix. You know what? I've decided that I want to add to the get out of jail cards that they're not necessarily 100% free. You might have to pay a certain amount of money as a bribe to avoid being sent to jail. However, the amount of bribe will vary depending on which card you get, so yeah. You know what? I might actually put one in the travel deck. We'll see. So, anyway, this needs to have like separations into what are essentially paragraphs. Holland Tunnel doesn't exist, but I do have warp zones. Also, Cab Company doesn't exist either. Yeah. Hmm. I actually decided I don't actually like that one. Boonk. Go away. See, here's the thing. Like the triples thing with the special triple movement, most of the vouchers just don't apply to that. So, keyword, most. So if it doesn't apply, then haha, no. Yeah, the item 4 is actually just a duplicate of item 2. You know what? That's something I didn't think of earlier. Yeah, what I forgot is how to define what happens when you have to play a get out of jail free card to avoid being sent to jail by doubles. Yeah. I decided that this would make get out of jail cards a little more interesting because the fact that you use the get out of jail card to prevent going to jail. Which, however, due to the whole like prevent going to jail thing, landing on a space that says go to jail, you just on your next turn you just move off of it. And of course, you know, if it's a card effect that sends you to jail, well, it didn't happen. So what? Continue from there. The only one I really needed to explain in their rules is what happens if you roll doubles 3 times and use a get out of jail free card to avoid going to jail because of the third triples. Like, yeah, if you have enough get out of jail cards, but if you don't, well then. Oh, that's another thing though, is that if I have a get out of jail card and a go to jail card in the travel deck, could be fun. Now, that's different from the roll tokens because I changed it so that you get roll tokens and not travel cards for um, rolling the bus thingy. But roll tokens, because of the fact that in this one you can play them on an opponent to force the opponent to land on one of your properties, Wiki-heal. They actually do have a significant value. I'm torn on deciding whether or not you should be able to you know what I'm going to do is like you have to bribe other players to use the roll tokens. You can't actually trade roll tokens. Alrighty then. Well, I'm going to call this stream for now. Mm. Well, I don't see anyone that I would want to raid, even if I could raid them. Oh well. I don't know. Maybe like say hi to Nuxanor for me or XQC. Whatever. All right. See you guys later.